Well, good afternoon. First of all, I just want to apologize for the delay because I know there's a lot of you here who came here, who've been here since probably about 12 noon, and some of you probably didn't even have lunch. And I just want to sincerely apologize that you remain here and really appreciate that. My name is Markenzy Lapointe. I'm the United States Attorney here for the Southern District of Florida. I want to give you a sense of what's going to happen here, who's going to speak, and what's the order of who's going to speak. So, and I'm going to spell the name for you as well to make sure we have that. Uh, David Newman, he is the Principal Deputy Attorney, Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice with the National Security Division, and he will start with his remarks. And after that, this is Jeff Veltri, Veltri. He is the Special Agent in Charge, FBI Miami, and his assistant is with him here, Carlos Goris. He's the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, FBI Miami. I also want to introduce you to the trial lawyers in this case. Obviously, the people that are going to be speaking here are sort of the principals, but this case is they worked many, many long hours by the trial lawyers and the agents. Let me start with Johnathan Stratton, sitting here. He does not wear suits, so I'm very happy that he's looking as dapper as he is today. Senior counsel John Shipley with us. And I also want to introduce you from DC. We have Heather Smith with us right here. Heather Smith is a senior trial attorney with the National Security Division. And Christine Bonomo is also a trial attorney. I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic now to David Newman. By the way, I'm so glad for all the work that you've done in this. We appreciate you being here.
Good evening. I'm David Newman, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the Department of Justice. As you just heard, I'm joined today by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Markenzy Lapointe, who I would like to thank for hosting us for this event. Also with us, as you just heard, is Jeff Veltri, Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's Miami Field Office. This afternoon, Victor Manuel Rocha, former U.S. Ambassador and 20-year State Department employee, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of acting covertly as an agent of a foreign government and conspiring to defraud the government of the United States. Stepping back, this case is a reminder that we face espionage and insider risks from a range of countries, and that we in the Justice Department have zero tolerance for espionage activity from anyone. We are, of course, laser focused on the threat from China and Russia, but we know that the espionage landscape is not limited to threats from those countries. Today's plea brings to an end more than 4 decades of betrayal and deceit by Mr. Rocha. For most of his life, Mr. Rocha lived a lie. While holding various senior positions in the US government, he was secretly acting as the Cuban government's agent. That is a staggering betrayal of the American people. And what he admitted today is an acknowledgement that every oath he took to the United States was a lie. Mr. Rocha has now been held to account, and the terms of the plea ensure that he will serve a sentence that is commensurate with his crimes. As you heard in court today, Mr. Rocha's deceit began in the early 1970s when he first developed a relationship with Cuban intelligence officials while living in Chile. Although he was born in Colombia, Mr. Rocha became a naturalized US citizen within a few years of that first contact. And by 1981, he has successfully secured employment at the Department of State. Over the course of his career, Mr. Rocha rose through the diplomatic ranks, taking on multiple assignments relating to Latin America and postings in the region. And his roles included serving as the US government's second highest officer at the US Interest Section in Havana, as the Director of Inter-American Affairs on the National Security Council, and later as the US Ambassador to Bolivia. Several of these positions gave him access to non-public information and the ability to affect, sometimes profoundly, US foreign policy. Mr. Rocha continued to act as a Cuban government agent long after retiring from the State Department, including going on a secret mission to Havana in 2017, and he went to great lengths to hide his double life. He used foreign passports during overseas travel, and he falsely portrayed himself as a staunch opponent of the Cuban regime. But ultimately, his deception couldn't last. In 2022, an undercover FBI agent purporting to be a Cuban intelligence officer contacted Mr. Rocha, and Rocha agreed to a meeting in the First Miami Presbyterian Church, a historic Miami landmark less than a mile from where we are today. On his way to the meeting, Mr. Rocha employed surveillance detection methods to make sure he was not followed, exactly as he has been trained to do by his Cuban handlers in the past. In his conversations with the undercover agent, Mr. Rocha described how he had spent a lifetime serving a foreign power hostile to the United States, and said that he was proud of his duplicity and his betrayal. He called the United States, quote, the enemy. He spoke of his contacts in Cuban intelligence services as, quote, comrades, and he described his time working as a spy as, quote, a grand slam, close quote, for the Cuban government. His own words leave no doubt about the true nature of his career, and that he disregarded and egregiously violated the national security of the United States and the trust of the public that he had sworn to serve. Stepping back, as I said, this case is a reminder that we face espionage and insider threats from a range of adversaries. While we know that the greatest espionage threats often come from China and Russia, we also know that the espionage landscape is not limited to threats from those countries. And a core mission of the National Security Division, my division, is to vigorously prosecute those who break their oath to protect this country by serving as willing agents of any government. And we work in close partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, and other federal agencies to hold these individuals accountable for their actions. This case highlights the enduring counterintelligence threat posed by the government of Cuba and the Havana regime that has long focused its espionage activities on Washington, D.C., as well as on local communities here in Florida. As Mr. Rocha's case shows, a top priority of the Cuban government continues to be infiltrating our government and undermining American security. And this threat is heightened by Cuba's close collaboration with other foreign adversaries on intelligence matters, including the government of the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation. Our commitment to this mission at the Department of Justice is enduring, and we remain ever vigilant. With today's plea, the Department of Justice holds Mr. Rocha to account, and we will make clear to all those who violate their oath, you will never be safe from the Department of Justice. The task now falls to the US government to try to measure the cost and impact of Mr. Rocha's years of deception. As you saw in the plea agreement, Mr. Rocha has promised to cooperate fully with the government and to provide truthful and complete information and testimony about his criminal conduct and about his deception. That will be a lengthy process, and it is now underway. And we are going to hold Mr. Rocha to the full extent of his obligations. At the same time, we have no illusions. Given the length of his covert action, his access to sensitive information, it is likely the case that we will never know the full measure of the harm that he caused, the life that he ruined, and the secrets that he disclosed. And we expect that he will spend the next 15 years in prison reflecting on those harms and reflecting on the consequences of his actions. I'd just like to thank U.S. Attorney Markenzy Lapointe, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, as well as NSD's own Counterintelligence and Export Control Section for their steadfast efforts to prosecute this case and bring it to a strong resolution. I'd also like to recognize the dedicated, talented agents of the FBI's Miami field office whose extraordinary work made possible this prosecution. They received valuable contributions by the FBI's Washington field office, as well as by the Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service. With that, I'll turn it over to U.S. Attorney Lapointe for his remarks.
Thank you, David. Once again, good afternoon. As amply stated by David Newman. Manuel Rocha, a 70-year-old Miami resident and former U.S. Department of State employee who served in the National Security Council and as a U.S. ambassador, pleaded guilty to secretly acting for decades as an agent of the government of the Republic of Cuba. Rocha admitted his guilt in open court here in Miami, and immediately thereafter was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Beth Bloom to the statutory maximum of 15 years in prison for his crimes of conviction. Specifically, he pled guilty to count 1 and 2 of the indictment for conspiring to commit an offense against the United States and conspiring to defraud the United States and acting as an agent of a foreign government without notice as required by law. Rocha agreed to cooperate with the United States government with no promise of a future benefit for that cooperation, which is unusual. In addition to the 15-year sentence that was imposed, Rocha was ordered to pay the maximum $500,000 fine. Rocha must also abide by the very serious restrictions and requirements, including the requirements that he give up all future benefits due from his State Department's career, turn over all profits he may earn from publicity about the case, cooperate fully with the United States, report any foreign contacts, and never disclose any non-public information without approval. Rocha's guilty plea brings accountability and a measure of closure to a chapter that threatened our nation's security. During the plea, he admitted, beginning in 1973, I will not go through all the facts, as some of it may be redundant. Beginning in 1973 until his arrest, he secretly supported the Republic of Cuba and its clandestine intelligence gathering. I tend to use secret, fancy word for secret for me. Clandestine secret intelligence gathering mission against the United States by serving as a covert agent of Cuba's General Directorate of Intelligence. To further that role, he obtained employment with the United States Department of State in positions that provided him access to non-public information, including classified information, and the ability to affect U.S. foreign policy. His career also included a stint as Deputy Principal Secretary at the U.S. Interest Section in Havana, Cuba itself. After his State Department employment ended, he engaged in other acts intended to support Cuba's intelligence services. He provided false and misleading information to the United States to maintain his secret mission, engage in clandestine activity, and travel outside the United States to meet with Cuban intelligence operatives. In a series of meetings during 2022 and 2023, with an undercover FBI agent posing as a covert Cuban General Directorate of Intelligence representative, he admitted to working for Cuba for decades. He celebrated his service as a Cuban intelligence agent, working against the enemy, here, the United States. He admitted during the plea today that he thought the story of his illegal activity for Cuba would never be told because he believed he had the intelligence, knowledge, and discipline to never be detected. However, he underestimated those same skills in the prosecutors and law enforcement agents who worked tirelessly to bring him to justice for betraying his oath to country. As this case shows, there will come a time when you will be punished for your crimes. Rocha callously disregarded the national security of the United States. His activities and deceit betrayed his oath of office and obstructed the lawful functions of the United States government. His punishment, 15-year federal sentence, virtually a life sentence for a man of his age, sends a powerful message to those acting or who consider acting as an unlawful agent of a hostile foreign power in Miami or elsewhere in the United States. The truth, your truth, will be uncovered. You should never think you are safe from detection. The United States government will seek you out anywhere, at any time, and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. So the old saying, you can't run, but you can hide. The Spanish version is, puedes correr, pero no puedes esconderte. In this particular case, he was caught, and he was going to be caught. I am mindful that Rocha's decades-long criminal activity on behalf of the Cuban government may be especially painful for many in South Florida. We in this community are especially aware of the dangers of the kind of undemocratic, authoritarian state that he supported by his criminal conduct. Just about every place you walk through in this community, you'll find someone who's from a place who is dealing with that type of authoritarian government, that type of chaos. So it hurts for a lot of us here. To members of this community, whether you or your family came here from Cuba or another country that does not support the values of our democracy, I personally assure you that my office will continue to zealously protect your rights as citizens and bring to justice anyone who unlawfully betrays the United States. I want to stress that his willingness to cooperate, as required by his plea agreement, is important, crucial indeed, but doesn't change the seriousness of his misconduct or his secret breach of the trust placed in him. As I close out my remarks, I would like to thank again the assistant attorneys, the trial lawyers in this case, who are standing behind me. That is the two gentlemen and the two ladies standing behind me, who worked tirelessly to prosecute this case and bring forth this impactful resolution. I want to thank the National Securities Division, Counterintelligence, and Export Control Section trial attorneys as well. I would also, I spent a great deal of time with the FBI, Special Agent in charge here and his team. They do a tremendous amount of work. In this case, symbolizes the amazing work that you folks and your folks do on a regular basis. Of course, this didn't happen by itself. They had valuable contributions from FBI Washington and, of course, the State Diplomatic Security Service, who actually worked to get this done. I'm going to now go ahead and have Special Agent in charge, Jeff Veltri, say a few words, because my view of the world is, as prosecutors, we do a great deal, but without the sort of incredible amount of work, the countless hours that your folks put on the ground when the rest of us sleep comfortably in our beds, I thank you. I thank your folks for all that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Lapointe. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Jeffry Veltri. I am the Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Miami field office. Today, Victor Manuel Rocha was sentenced to 15 years in prison for deceiving our nation. Throughout a State Department career which spanned decades, he served in positions of ever-increasing trust, including time in the National Security Council and as a United States ambassador. He was privy to some of our nation's most closely guarded secrets and had access to our country's most senior government leaders. Yet all along, unknown to those around him, he was secretly acting as an agent for the government of the Republic of Cuba. He blatantly violated his oath of office, along with the loyalty that is inherent with that oath, going so far as to refer to the United States, the country he served, as the enemy. This investigation culminated in a complex undercover operation over the past year. In a series of meetings with an undercover FBI agent, Rocha repeatedly made statements admitting to his decades of work for Cuba, spanning 40 years. At the initial contact meeting, Rocha immediately engaged in a lengthy conversation during which he described and celebrated his activities as a Cuban intelligence agent. In addition to referring to the United States as the enemy, he consistently used the term "we" to describe himself and Cuba throughout a series of meetings with our undercover agent. Rocha praised Fidel Castro as the comandante and referred to his contacts in Cuban intelligence as compañeros, or comrades. In his own words, he described his work as a Cuban agent as, quote, a grand slam, and the cement that strengthened the Cuban regime over the last 40 years. This investigation serves as a grim reminder of who our adversaries are and what they are willing to do to undermine our way of life. Rooting out foreign agents within our government who who are bent on cooperating with hostile foreign intelligence services is a subtle and challenging work that requires a high degree of patience. It is like playing a never-ending game of chess against an opponent whose pieces are concealed and potential moves unknown, except it's not a game. As this case demonstrates, the counterintelligence threat facing our nation is real, pervasive, and has the potential to cause great harm to our national security. It requires eternal vigilance and highly trained agents, analysts, and prosecutors who are incredibly well-versed in our adversaries' tradecraft and priorities. It is a world in the shadows that has very real consequences if we let our guard down. Although the prosecution has concluded, this investigation is far from over. The FBI and our U.S. government partners will conduct a thorough damage assessment to fully understand the impact of Mr. Rocha's actions on our national security. If anyone has information they feel may be pertinent to the U.S. government's damage assessment, they can call our tip line or submit an online tip on the FBI's website. That number is 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. I want to commend the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida, the Department of Justice's National Security Division for their close partnership on this highly sensitive matter. I also want to thank our Washington Field Office and our Counterintelligence Division and the Department of State's Diplomatic Security Service for their valuable contributions to this case. Because this matter is ongoing, I ask for your patience and understanding with our ability to get into specifics at this time. Thank you.